Hey everybody, and welcome to the TruPro ThinkTank. I appreciate all your answers to our chronic ankle dysfunction quiz this week. There were some really great answers and I loved it. Every one of you guys was right. I appreciate all your answers. There were some really amazingly intelligent answers on there and I loved it. In fact, I learned a little bit for sure. And now what I want you to do is just give you guys a little bit about what we would answer this looking through the Trunamics lenses of structure, function, and information, energy medicine type stuff. So first of all, I would look at ankles typically through the structural lens just to see how things are. I'm going to look at the relationships of the inside and the outside of the ankle, particularly the peroneals, the tibialis posterior, and how that's maybe some locked short, tightened up tissues or locked long tissues that are working too much. So I'm going to look at that from the front to back aspects as well, because we know this tibialis anterior can really get gunked up and that's going to shut down our subtalar motion and everything else. And then I'm going to look to see if maybe the outside of the foot is locked short, causing too much pronation and tibial rotation and shutting down that arch and changing the aspects of how the weight is distributed over the foot. I'm also really going to look at those arches and the transverse arch, and at least if I stay local, of course, I'm going to have to take this up to the adductors and the hamstrings and the hip flexors for sure from a structural model. But basically, if I'm sticking locally, my big rocks are going to be the tibialis anterior, tibialis posterior, and some of the calf aspects that are controlling the stability. So if I go from there and then I think about the functional model of how I want to look at this, of course I could pretty much say anything in the body functionally can lead to ankle instability or chronic ankle problems if it isn't working right. So of course what I typically am going to look at too is functionally is how well is this fascia and the peroneals and the tibialis anterior working, and especially once again I'm going to come up to here to this fascial line of the tibialis anterior and the peroneals and how that becomes the IT band in the glutes, because if anything gets stuck in here, it's going to shut down everything down here. The most important thing, as you guys have taken my classes, we talk about is how well is that subtalar joint working, because that's such a really good torque converter for motion and loading and unloading of the foot and the ankle, and if that gets shut down in any plane of motion, it's going to show up somewhere else. So some of the other things I look at that can lead to that are, of course, hip flexors that aren't working very well, opposite side glutes, and of course, you guys know I love the thoracic spine and its function. So I would look at those big rocks. Of course, that's one of a tiny amount, but those are the main ones that we might run into. Now, if we go from there to the energetic aspects, and if we look at, of course, the most important thing we have to look at here would be the reciprocal of the opposite wrist. So if there's not a healthy relationship between that left wrist and the right ankle, in this case, we know that the proprioceptive system is not going to be firing very well because that's how it references each other based on the opposite reciprocal. And also all of the balance of the meridians between the gallbladder meridian and the kidney meridian, you know, those have to be very well balanced for communication in the body, as well as the bladder meridian and the liver and stomach meridian. I found those can be, when we take it into function, especially with body energy, those are the big things that are going to really get us shut down in the ankle. Now, if we take that to the body-centered psychology aspect, of course, we know dealing with those meridians, if there's a lot of fear about making a decision, you know, the gallbladder and the kidneys will cause a lot of chronic pain or chronic issues going in there and immobility. In fact, you guys that have looked at that know that there's not a whole lot of really bad ankle sprains that usually don't involve either fear of making a decision, moving forward, not being able to stand up with yourself, or being angry about a decision that was made for you that you made in the past. So those are some of the body-centered psychology aspects we can look at that too. Now, how would you approach this in your practice? Well, that really depends on your background and what you can do, but I just like to give people the lenses of how they can look at, in this instance, chronic ankle dysfunction, because all of those answers that I just gave are right, all of the answers that you guys gave are right too, but knowing where to start and where to go, because you may just need one of those approaches to balance a chronic ankle, or you may need to use 7 or 8 of them. Typically, if it's chronic, as you guys know, any chronic injury is always going to have a structural component, a functional neurological component, and also an emotional energetic component. There's just no such thing as something doesn't get better that's not on all three levels. So sometimes the body needs a lot of help in getting that reset. So if you guys have any more questions, go ahead and feel free to jump on this thread. I hope that gives you some more insights into what you can do in your practice, or maybe some areas you want to discover and learn. So anything in there, if you have any questions, we cover all of those in our TruPro training. So I hope to see you in a class real soon, and I appreciate you joining us for this question and answer. We'll have another one real soon. Thanks.